everybody. Welcome to Mask Live. As today we are able to talk with Stacey Sutherland from Trust AZ as we talk about everything sex trafficking safety. We'll be live for the next 15 minutes, so this is your opportunity to ask the expert questions on this topic. And, we're just here to help families understand what's out there and how to best prepare our children. Stacey Sutherland is the director of Trust, an Arizona anti-trafficking network program that provides training, resources, and collaborative engagement to companies and organizations fighting against human trafficking. Ms. Sutherland has dedicated almost a decade of her life to battling modern-day slavery by training thousands of first responders, victim-facing agency staff members, and nurses to respond to help victims. Thank you, Stacey, so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So before we dive into some questions, what made you get into this?
I worked in EMS. I was a first responder for a lot of years, and my husband and I had a baby, and both of us working 24 hours is not conducive to raising children. I have two stepkids as well. And so I started a job at the Pinal County Attorney's Office working at their Family Advocacy Center as their Children's Justice Coordinator. And we had applied for a federal human trafficking grant and we got it. And so I applied for that position and just kind of fell in love with working with survivors and just working to kind of end what's going on within trafficking. And then I found kind of my niche in education.
Wow. So tell me a little bit more about Trust AZ. Is it more of helping find the victims of trafficking and getting them to the next step, or tell me more?
So we primarily do a bunch of training and education to a variety of groups, all the way from lay citizens, all the way up to advanced training for law enforcement. We bring in speakers from across the nation. We send people to conferences. We just sent 67 law enforcement prosecutors and judges to a juvenile sex trafficking conference in DC last week. We do a lot of technical assistance with other agencies. We do a little bit of outreach with victims and with our partners who serve victims, and then a lot of public awareness. So we don't do a lot of victim stuff. Every once in a while, a victim will contact us and we get them over to the right people. But primarily our focus is in that education and resource realm. And so we also provide a lot of free resources for those different disciplines, as well as families and parents.
That's awesome. So tell, as we kind of start this, explain actually what is sex trafficking.
So sex trafficking is going to be the recruitment, harboring, transporting, obtaining, patronizing, or soliciting a minor for commercial sex. Federally and Arizona state statute, since I'm from Arizona, basically no minor can consent to commercial sex. So they're automatically sex trafficking victims. And when we say commercial sex, a lot of people think, oh, well, that would be the exchange of sex and money. It doesn't matter. It's anything of value. So if they're trading sex for a place to stay that night, they're trading sex for drugs, they're trading sex for food, it is a commercial sex act and it is sex trafficking with that person. So it's very defined what that commercial sex act can be.
So what are the risk factors for being sex trafficked?
So anyone can be sex trafficked. We do have some risk factors, but then again, I've also seen people with none of these risk factors be trafficked. So, really anybody can be, but we do see certain risk factors in some of our population, including sexual minority status, LGBTQ+, a history of abuse or neglect. A lot of our victims do have a past history of child sexual abuse. And so that's why it's really important to engage previous victims and build resiliency so they're not re-victimized later in life. Exposure to intimate partner violence or domestic violence in the household. So kind of seeing that domestic violence, poverty, gang affiliation, having contact with child welfare services. So having touches by them in the lifetime, and then having a high adverse childhood experience or ACE scores also are risk factors.
What age and who Who is actually being trafficked?
So kids of all ages can be trafficked. Any child can be trafficked. Nationally, they say the average is about 14 years old. One off of ASU's sex trafficking intervention research, they do a youth experiences survey. Their 2019 survey put our age at about 14.2 years old as the average age of entry. Children that are familial trafficked, mean they are trafficked by family members, which we do see here in Arizona and nationally, can be as young as birth. So we have had, in the past, we have had a very high profile case where it was a 2-year-old who was being familial trafficked. But kids of all genders, boys, gender non-conforming children, and transgender children are also being trafficked. And we do know that their cases are underreported. And we know that there is a high demand for those populations. But they're much less likely to disclose their trafficking situation. And I think it's sorry.
I can't, the 2-year-old.
And it was you can Google it. It was a very heinous case. But we also want to look for kids who seem typical, who look like just all of our children. Some kids live with their parents or guardians. They go to school, they're appropriately dressed, they get good grades, and they present like all children their same age, and you would never know that they're being trafficked. So we can't just look and try to identify somebody by the way they look that they're being trafficked.
Right. What are the signs that a minor might be being trafficked?
So we look for those who are repeatedly absent from school, truant, maybe those who are being withdrawn from school, those who are being provided like a lot of resources that are beyond their means. Like maybe they have a part-time job, but all of a sudden now they have expensive purses. Somebody's getting them the brand new iPhone 13. They're getting hair extensions and highlights and their nails done. And I can always say it takes a village to see what's happening with our kids, So you're like, oh, I know her mom would never pay for hair extensions, and she's only working about 15 hours a week. So it seems weird that she has, a brand new Michael Kors purse and things. So you start to kind of look for items like that. And, in our boys, they'll have expensive clothing, shoes, electronics, things like that too. Fake IDs, sometimes hotel room keys in their bags, backpacks or purses. They might be dating someone who's much older, who seems to be controlling, maybe potentially semi-abusive. They may have large amounts of cash on them. They may have signs of physical abuse. Running away, we do look for self-harm. So maybe some cutting, some past suicide attempts, maybe new friend groups, or with people that seem to be new friends that seem to be very controlling. And then we look for medical stuff like sexually transmitted infections. Maybe they're starting to have what we would call like somatic pain, unexplained pains. And that's kind of the trauma kind of in their body showing outwardly.
Gosh. So we were talking before we started this, and we were starting to talk about college and what's going on today for kids. And you were sharing during the pandemic, you got on TikTok just to kind of smile during the pandemic, but we're kind of alarmed from, what you saw and came across. Can you share about that?
Yeah, I saw a lot of like encouragement of becoming sugar babies and like going to college, and basically it would be a form of prostitution where you are dating someone and they're exchanging sex for paying for your college tuition or taking you out and buying you nice things, expensive things. And I think part of that is it sounds really good and it sounds exciting, and obviously it's a bit glamorized, but there can be long-term mental health impacts to that later in life that can present. And so it was just kind of interesting to see that there's kind of this glamorized addition to that, and a lot of people were hyping it up like, oh, here's something you can do while you're going to college, and you can have a lot of nice things and someone pay for your tuition and come out debt free. And at the end of the day, that is somebody who's exploiting somebody else. Regardless if they have the means to do that, they're still exploiting somebody because they don't have those means.
It's incredible. And, we're going to get into after the break how social media has played a role in this, but that is yet just another form that they're getting to our kids and exploiting them. And what a job we have as parents. Like, how can we help, protect our kids from this?
So I think one of the first things is to build and maintain healthy relationships with your kids. And it gets hard because you want to spend quality time with them. And at one point, they become teenagers and their friends rule their lives and family dinners become less and less. They get jobs. Many of our victims are lonely. They might be depressed and isolated. And so having those healthy interpersonal relationships and attachments really help mitigate those vulnerabilities. I also suggest having ongoing, continual conversations with your kids. My youngest is 9. I'm not going to have a full-blown human trafficking conversation with him, but we can talk about when he's on his iPad, like, hey, you should never send pictures of yourself to anybody, and nobody should ever be sending any kind of pictures of them to you, right? On any app or anything that you're on. And obviously we heavily monitor that, but we kind of have some of those conversations. And then with my older boys, it is having conversations about what sex trafficking is and, what it looks like. So they can see it not only in themselves, but their friends or somebody being groomed. And then because I have boys, we talk about consent, right? Like, what does consent mean? I love the video Consent Tea. If you've ever seen it, it's a great video on YouTube. It's so great. It's all about consent, but in the form of drinking tea. It's a great video. It's really hilarious. And it really drives home what consent means. Like, hey, if somebody's unconscious, you don't pour tea in their mouth, right? And so just having those continual conversations, it's not a one-time conversation. It grows. You see things in the news, they bring stuff up, and it's just important to have that. And then my husband and I are both have that medical background. So we were really honest about sexual development and using anatomical terms and just talking about like healthy relationships and healthy expectations of sexual relationships, because some of the things that are put out there in the media, and then, obviously you can Google pornography in 2 seconds, don't depict healthy sexual relationships or healthy relationships with other people. And so that was really important to us. And then we just be vigilant with online safety. We know what apps our kids are downloading. Our kids hang out on social media, all kids, that's where they hang out. Back in the day, traffickers, predators, exploiters, they'd hang out where the kids hang out. So it'd be like the mall, parks, things like that. But now our kids are all online. And so that's where these people hang out. And so it's just really important to know, like, hey, what's okay and not okay to post. So you want to tag yourself at the football game, wait till you get home from the football game, then tag yourself at the football game. Keep your profile private, only add people you really know. And then a lot of our apps as parents, it's really hard to keep up because they change all the time. So researching what those apps do, and then sometimes a seemingly innocent app that you'll let like your 9-year-old download has a backdoor chat feature that you wouldn't know about unless you got online and you read about it. So it's just knowing what your kids are doing and that there's not other aspects of that chat that could allow somebody in to be with your child and chat with your child.
Absolutely. I mean, in this digital age that we're living in, it's not going anywhere. So we have to stay up to date on it. And you said the ongoing conversations. I mean, that's what we've based our organization on, is talking about all of the topics age appropriately, ongoing, and literally starting pre-K through college, because you're still a parent when your kids go away. That role just changes a little bit, but you're still there to teach them through, through life. So, well, we are going to take a break for now. When we come back, we'll be diving deeper into this conversation and talking about, where they're luring our children and how we can help prepare them and protect them. Because at the end of the day, education is everything, but you have to take the next step in doing something about it to protect your children. So remember to watch this episodes in its entirety. Download the Mask Matters app. It's available on Apple and Google Play, and have parenting solutions at your fingertips. Also, be sure to check out this latest issue of Mass the magazine. Stacey has an article in it, and it's all about personal settings, from healthy relationships to the online jungle, how to really keep your children safe. So we'll take a break and